And we are back. I am your host, Doc Solo, the director of Ka-Pow, the Comic Art Academy, the real art school for real people with real lives, taught by real industry pros. And I have thoroughly been enjoying sharing my intimate conversation with my brother and mentor and friend, the incomparable Deon Nuckols. Now, if you haven't checked out part one, you might want to go back and do that. When I tell you he shares his journey, his insights, and his highlights and his pitfalls, he shares it all. Listen, art to art is these are the type of conversations that I'm fortunate to have with incredible artists and creators that have helped shape me into the creative that I am today, however that may look. But they are willing to sit down and just be open and just give volumes of value to those who are just willing to listen. And you can hear the affection, you can hear the passion, you can hear it all in the inflections of their voices. And I'm giving you a backstage pass to this. And so if you like what you're hearing, please leave a comment, like, follow, subscribe, the whole 9 things. We're going to continue these. And right now we're in the throes of Black History Month here at Ka-Pow and across the country, where I am highlighting incredible Black talent across the comic sphere. And I'm going to tell you something. This conversation was long, and it's uncut. It's uncut. I'm giving it all to you guys in bits and pieces. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this next segment of Art to Art with the amazing Deon Nuckols. Check it out. Ask me whatever. I'm an open book, and you've known that about me from Jump Street. I tell it all, right? Okay. She was like, "Are you just a figurehead, or is this your school?" Right? And she's my girl Lauren, who I interviewed, and I'm like, "No, it's my school." You know, she says, so I can see your work. And she saw more. She's like, "Okay." Because the representation mattered to her. You understand? She wanted to know what she stands to encounter as, now granted, she's a Black woman, but a Black person nonetheless. But what am I going to run into should I pursue this course? Right now, she's a superstar student. She's killing the game. I can't wait for her. She's going to be part of our first graduating class. But it mattered to her, and I'm like, no, we have to not just show up, but we got to show up and show out. And more of us need to be more vocal in these industries, because a lot of us are just kind of towing the line. I'm doing, I'm sorry to run on, but we just talking.
No, you good.
I'm thinking about doing a video specifically on that, on this platform, on the necessity for representation in all areas. Like when I'm watching YouTube, I'm seeing dudes that, I don't know if I should call his name out, but I ain't scared. Right, but it's not a shot. It's not a shot. But I'm seeing some profound Black artists, right, that I've never seen draw a Black character. You see what I'm saying, right? And I said, you know what I'm gonna do on Ka-Pow? Yeah, I'm drawing everybody, but it's gonna be like a 2-to-1 ratio. Right, maybe 50-50. For every 2 non-Black Black characters, you'll get one that is non-Black, because our culture is rich with creativity. You know what I mean? We have set the pace for culture. Black folks, we don't copy culture. We are the trendsetters for culture across the spectrum, from culture rock and roll, culture and creativity across the spectrum. Music, rock, pop, started with us. You see what I'm saying? Hip hop, that's us too. You know what? Fashion, yeah, that's us. That's really us. Most 9 times out of 10, right? How much more so in the creative arts field? You know what I mean? I shudder to think when I think of, most people don't know this, right? Because he didn't claim this, and I'm doing a video on him for Black History Month. George Harriman, the godfather of the modern comic strip. He did Crazy Cat. Well, it wasn't revealed until much later, decades after he died, that he was actually a Black man posing as white. You know what I mean? And he was, yes, George Harriman, Crazy Cat. I have his entire book here, right? But he lived this secret, and he told his secret via his comic strip, right? A black cat in love with a white mouse. Years later, his grandkids didn't even know that they were black. But he was a Creole, he was a mulatto in New Orleans, and when his family dispersed, they made a vow that they would not communicate or interact lest they be found out. Because they could all pass. And he goes to New York, he makes his fortune. William Randolph Hearst paid him average, I think it was $700 a week back in the 1940s, which equates to $14,000 a week in today's dollars. And told him whether he never drew a strip or not, he was such a fan of Crazy Cat, whether he never drew a strip or not, he would get that for the rest of his life. And he did. Extremely wealthy. Later, decades later, stuff comes out. Birth certificate gets found. Turns out my man is black. And he wouldn't take his hat off because his hair had kink in it. And so he always wore a hat to hide the kink in his hair.
Really?
And because people would ask where he was from, and they started calling him George the Greek because they thought he was from Greece to explain the texture of his hair. But he died. He had a bunch of ailments, but it was because most people believe it's because of these dark secrets that he was keeping, because it tortured him. That he was living this, diluted his bloodline, married white, everybody goes on thinking they're white. Turns out George Harriman, who gave birth to Charles Schultz, who was a fan, Peanuts, Bill Watterson, who was a fan of Crazy Cat, right? Calvin and Hobbes. George Harriman. You see what I'm saying? Our contributions have been profound.
We often deal with what they call unconscious bias? If I'm saying that correctly? Where they may not necessarily be look at us a certain way, or think that they're looking at us a certain way. But what ends up happening is, because we are black, they dismiss what we have to say. And I've been in that room several times. Where I say something and I'm like, I just said that. But you didn't hear it until this individual said it. Yeah. In the same day.
I had it in law enforcement all the time. All the time. Sergeant Perry, we're going to do this. And I'm like, I gave you all that suggestion in my brief 3 weeks ago. You dig what I'm saying?
That's why it's important that they see us. I mean, and what is even more the problem is we've been so brainwashed to believe it that we do it to each other.
We do it to each other.
Which is the sad part.
Which is true. Which is true. But yeah, it's a big deal that I think that now the elder statesmen such as yourself and I, we have to, I feel an obligation with whatever platform I'm fortunate enough to have. If it stays at right now, we at 300 followers. If it stays here, I'm good with that. I ain't big on numbers, right? You dig what I'm saying? I'm big on value, right? But if it touches one person that they see that, these are black men that have literally gotten it out the mud. I tell folks, nothing was, if you all watching this, really, I know the gray hair. I got 7 grandkids, just FYI, right? Okay, I got 7 grandkids. So a lot of people think, by the grace of God, they think I'm in my 30s. No, every bit in the 50s, believe it, okay? But the era we came from and the message that our parents and our grandparents instilled in us, we got the message of the work and the grind. We got it. Most of us got it, right? And we applied it, again, whether it was flying out to Rhode Island just to learn a program. You dig what I'm saying? When I was at the animation studio, my mentor, and I'm going to try to get him on here, Doug Rice, he was one of the lead animators. He was one of the key animators. I was a pencil sharpener, load paper, grab coffee, and maybe I could do a couple in-betweens here and there, right? You know what I mean? I was an unpaid intern, right? But he was somebody that said, kid, you got some real talent. Do you really want to do this? And he knew that I was on public aid, right? He knew I had 3 kids. Kenny wasn't even on the way yet. She wasn't even in the mix yet, right? But she knew at the time I had 3 kids, and it took me to get there to just to get 3 hours of exposure. It took me almost 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back on public transportation because I didn't have a car, right? I had to take buses and trains and walk several blocks just to get to the animation studio. He was like, if you can get to my, and he didn't live far. He said, if you can get to my place twice a week, I'll give you 2 hours of my time a week. You got some ability, kid.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? And guess what I did? I got there. You know what I mean? I got there. That's how much mentorship matters to me. You know, go ahead, comment on that.
The gentleman that mentored me, like I was telling you a little bit earlier, was a white guy, but he was the one that recognized me at Kenner. I remember going to my first interview, and I sat down and I said, I pulled out my portfolio. This is what I had done. And was showing him. He said, I've been waiting to meet you.
Wow.
Let me go back a little bit before I go there. I'm talking to one of the people that was he was responsible of hiring some of the people. He happened to be a lawyer. And I didn't know this. I'm meeting this guy for the first time, and he goes, well, normally we only hire industrial designers and engineers. And, you're neither one of these. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not going to get this job. I'm not going to get this job.
Right.
And going back to what I had said earlier, that was one of the things where I was like, God, I want to work drawing.
Right.
And I get into this other guy's office. Like, I have a second interview. I'm like, I have to go through this twice.
Right.
Rejected by him and then be rejected by this other guy.
Right.
I get into his office. Name is Kevin Maurer. And I sat in front of him. Dude, I'm like, okay, I can't. I'm one of those people, whatever I'm thinking,
no poker face. No poker face
at all. And I'm like, okay, I've got to change this. Whatever's going on right there, I got to make it different. And I get into his office, and he says to me, I've been waiting to meet you. He says, when I saw the designs you did on Batman, he says, you gave Batman these different feet, different boots. And I was like, really? I mean, don't most of your people do that? And he's like, no, they don't. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay. And he and I, we started talking, and I'm like, I started liking him more and more, right? And from that point on, I would go in his office, ask him how he was doing, can I help with anything? What would you do different? Those kind of things. And seeing what he was is still alive.
Okay, yeah. Let's not put him in the ground yet. If you may watch this, don't put him in the ground yet.
He's an extremely talented guy. I saw a piece that he did, and it just made me want to be even better.
It's my favorite piece, by the way.
That Thor one has a story behind it. I'll share that.
Yeah, please share that.
But the Cypress College thing that I was telling you earlier, this young lady walked up to me. She was a black young lady, and she said, will you be my mentor? I mean, after hearing what I had talked about, she was like, will you be my mentor?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about it. I said yes. I chuckled because I thought it was. I'm like, you don't even know me, and you want me to be your mentor.
Right.
But I like, yes, I would be your mentor, absolutely, because she. You know what? I don't even have that one today.
All this is online.
Oh my gosh. It's funny. There's some stuff that I look at that he's showing that I'm like, where in the world is he finding this stuff?
You used to have a blog that you may have neglected a long time ago.
I think you're right. There's a blog stopped. That was funny. It was important to her that she had someone because like her dad was Indian and her mom dad's Indian and her mom's black. Okay. So she wanted someone that she could not only be mentored by, but also be see that representation
that she could relate to.
Yeah.
That's important. That is so important. And where is she at now?
She's a TA at teacher's assistants, by the way.
Okay.
At college at Cypress College.
Okay. Now I wanted to. So I recently had John Boy on here. Right. I recently had John Boy on here, and when I tell you, man, your influence and the affection extends far and wide, right? John Boy's video might be up here in the next couple of weeks. I got to do that in 2 parts, probably like I'm gonna do this one. You all know that we just like, this is Art2Art, right? And we're just talking, and we're letting you guys peek in on the things we talk about. And but John Boy definitely was like, so what's going on with Deon, man? And he's like, he's still at I think at the time you were at Spin Master. Was it Jack Specific then? It was one of them. Jack Specific. Yeah. Right. Jack Specific. You've been everywhere. And I said, no, I think I corrected him. I think he's at Spin Master now. And he was like, is he still drawing? And I just kind of chuckled. And I said, well, no, he's head of 3D designs over there. He brought that to them and showed the value, and they like, yeah, we got to have this. You know what I mean? And again, talk about that if you want to, how you just took the bull by the horns and you worked on this new skill set that was adjacent but required a totally different way of thinking creatively, right? But you saw a hole, you filled it, and I told you, I said, yeah, he's doing mostly doing 3D designs. And I said, good luck getting him to pick up a pencil. I said, good luck getting him to pick up a pencil. I said, but he's like, yeah, and I think we got it on video, so I'm paraphrasing, so you all don't hit the comments with, no, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. I'm trying to, but it was in this vein. He just talked about how incredible of a talent that you are, and how he wished that you would have stayed in comics. He says, because you would have been one of the greats by today. No questions asked. And I said, you know what? I don't disagree with that. I said, I don't disagree with that. And he said, yeah, he's kind of like, yeah, we kind of lost one, a great one there in the comics. Talk to us about, your transition, why, you know what I mean? Because you and I talk, I know more than the people listening, but share with the folks, again, and it's not a slight on comics, and that's what we're not doing here, right? Is because it's been good to all of us. You know what I mean? It's been good to all of us. It's got its issues, right? Like most industries, it's rife with vices as well as virtues. But why did you kind of say, you know what, it's time to kind of move on from this? What sparked that evolution for you, that transition?
I have been working in toys for, now, mind you, I've actually been doing art for like 25 some odd years, 20 some odd years.
Right.
Maybe even longer than that, if I'm doing the math correct. But I started to look at other people that were doing comics. And I'm like, this person really loves to do this. I can see it in the artwork. And then when I would go to do it, I'm like, how come I don't feel that same excitement, that same love for this? And for me, it was like, I have to find out what it is that makes me happy. Because everybody was like, hey, Deon, why don't you do this comic? Why don't you do this comic? And I'm like...
Because you were doing stuff for Todd McFarlane at one time, and I remember the Spawn stuff that you were doing. It was just like fire. You introduced me to Bo Smith. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that whole thing. I mean, so you were definitely on an upward trajectory at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I didn't know anything about toys, maybe I would have stayed there, because my mentality, what happened was, I kind of grounded myself in comics and didn't know that I could go here. So comics was here for me, and everything else, when I started coloring, I'm like, oh, I can color comics? That's cool.
Yep.
So I learned that, and then I was like,
new skill set. Yep.
Yeah. And then I started like, okay, what else can I do? I can do storyboarding. Oh, well, that's cool.
New skill set, which equates to dollar signs. Mind you, we're talking about a family man, y'all. I haven't told my story yet. Sidebar. I'm not going to tell it here. One of my students is going to interview me, because someone said, Solo, you really need to tell your story. And those who know it, but money matters. Okay. And so with each skill set you require, it starts off at the baseline drawing for many of us. But as you start, again, you said coloring, storyboarding, and each one has a dollar sign. It adds a zero. You dig what I'm saying? Continue.
Animation. I was doing that. I was doing commercial. So I started doing commercial, that even got even higher. So by the time I got from commercial, I went back. The recession kind of kicked back in again, and I'm like, I needed a real job, because doing freelance, you can't. A lot of times, you can't pay the bill. It's a scary industry to be in. So I'm like, I need to.
That's a single man's industry.
Huh?
That's a single man's industry.
Oh yeah.
I tell folks, seriously, that's a single man's industry. When you listen, again, not trying to go too deep, because I'm trying to save it for when I'm interviewed by my students. But when you've got familial overhead, right, and you take your role as provider and caretaker of your tribe seriously, right, everything has to be your passion. All that stuff has to be measured against practical needs. Yeah. Right. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with, desire. Right. Because, my claim to fame is I'm the guy who got offered by DC and said, no, thank you. And that was what, 24 when that happened? I've been mentored by you, mentored by Doug Rice at the animation studio. And DC say, hey, dude, we want you to be on Superman. I was like, nope. You know what I mean? I just wanted to know I was good enough. That's all I needed to know. But I had a wife and 4 kids. You dig what I'm saying?
While I was at Hasbro, I was like, I want to know if I could do it. I just want to know if I can do it.
Yeah.
And entered the contest they had. That was that one Thor.
We got it. We got it. Yes, we got it.
I was like, I want to see if I can do it. If I can compete with their guys.
Right.
And so there it goes. So
Now, let me set the stage before you go any further. I don't want you to lose your thought. Let me set the stage. So there's a story here, you guys. So this was in 1998, right? Again, pre-social media. Internet is still very much a toddler at this point, okay? Still very much a toddler. Marvel did something it had not done, I don't think, ever. I may be wrong, but I don't think ever.
I want to say never.
This felt new, and I remember the rumblings because this was, again, Wizard World Chicago. Wizard World magazine had was the go-to source for all things comics in the mainstream, and Marvel had announced a worldwide talent search for 2 titles, Thor and I think X-Men. It was 2 titles. Right now, let me set the stage for you guys because you guys may never experience this in your lifetime. Back then, Marvel and DC, which were the primary powers that be, Image was a close number 3, right? But they were making crap loads of money. If you have not watched the Image documentary, I suggest that you see it. Right, that's what Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Valentino, Will Spertasio, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, all those guys banded together. And I'm sorry if I miss somebody's name. And they formed a powerhouse creative force that challenged the big 2, right? Well, Marvel says, you know what? We about to get some opportunities because at these shows, again, you will never experience this probably in your lifetime. But when Marvel and DC were there, tell them, D, if an editor was there and they were doing portfolio reviews, that was like Star Search. Line would be wrapped around the freaking building. Yes. You know what I mean? And everybody would bring their portfolios from all over the country. Some from across water, right? Just to put their portfolio in the hands of an editor and have them critique in real time. All right. And so Marvel had issued this talent search worldwide. Now, mind you, it was worldwide for Thor and X-Men. And Deon entered. I remember I was having a conversation. He's like, I think I'm about internet. I said, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And I was like, go for it, bro. And my man won. He actually won across all the entries in this worldwide talent search to do a story in Thor 1998, number 50. Just FYI, I purchased it today on eBay. Just so you know. Right? I went looking for it. I purchased it today. I'm going to end up doing an intro right before this goes live, even if it's in 2 parts, and I'm going to show it, right? I'm going to show, because this was the only image I could find from it, right? This is the only, and just so you know, all right, just so you know, let me see. To put some props on your name, that bad fella going for $400.
Oh okay? My God!
Don't get it twisted. This is where I got the image from. Right. And if I had it, I would buy it.
You're talking about the page itself is going for
the page itself, yes. Inked by Scott Hanna. Awesome splash page of Thor holding his hammer as he gets ready for battle. Deon Nuckols and Scott Hanna. See, I told you, man, I was prepped for you. I'm like page number 19 is for sale. And so yeah, so just so you know, I want to put some props on your name.
I was, I think, 20, 22, 23, 20, 20. I want to say 22, maybe when I did that.
When you did it? No, man, you had to be older than that because when we met, I got out of the military at 23. When I got offered by DC, I was 24. And I got on the police department at 25. So you had to be you were what, 3 years older than me?
Am I 3 years older?
Yeah, I'm 51. Now. Okay, no, so you're 5 years older than me. So you had to be about 30. 98. I don't know what year was born, but 98 I was 26.
1967.
Yep. Yeah. So it's still a long time ago, but
It
He
is.
won. You got to understand. You all have to understand. Okay. Now, whatever you may think of the industry today, I just saw a really good podcast by Ink Pulp, and I'm not big on pulp, propping other people. I really don't care either, right? Their audience is for them, mine is for me. But Ink Pulp with Eric Canetti and he's Italian brother, Matteo Scalera and Sean. I forget, good, but they had Jake Parker on there, right? They had Jake Parker, guy who created Inktober, incredible illustrator. And I just really watched. You can watch it. I think it's episode number 163, Ink Pulp. And you guys share the love when you watch this. Share the love. Give brother some props, okay? Because my audience ain't like yours yet. But interesting. They got into the weeds though about the nature of the industry today and why many artists don't do it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But back then we didn't get that memo. That information wasn't public knowledge. It was a very insular industry. You know what I mean? And everybody, it was the only game in town if you wanted to play with the big boys. There was no crowdfunding. There were no $3 million Kickstarters or Indiegogos or fun. None of that stuff existed. If you wanted to make your bones, you had to be at one of the big two. Now, in my opinion today, it's become so diluted in the marketplace. There's just too much, right? It's overwhelmed. But back then you had to be this tall to ride this ride. Now it's kind of like almost anybody can get in. You know what I mean? But back then you had to be this tall to ride this ride. And if you could get, if you got an editor's attention, you had skills across the board. You could tell a story, you could draw, you understand, and they knew they could make money off of you, right? So I'm setting the stage for how significant this win was. Everybody who was anybody cast their hat into that arena when that launched across the globe. It was thousands of entries of incredibly talented people, and this brother beat him. So I'm just gonna drop the mic on that and let you have the floor.
I actually don't need to pick it up at that point because you dropped it so well.
I got nothing. That's all I got. I keeps it a buck.
What was it, Bo Smith?
Bo Smith.
He not Bo Smith. It was the other one that was doing. It was the editor over. I can't think of his name right now, but I remember I was talking to another editor, and I was like, is there a way for me to do any of the comics? Because at that time, they were like, okay, we got this book done, and I'm like, can I do another comic? And at that point, I had just lost my job at Hasbro. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I'm more than ready to
go all in.
You know, and when I did, they were like, well, we don't have any work right now. We don't have any work. We don't have any work. Mm-hmm. And that was like so consistent. And then I spoke to one of the editors. I was like, dude, I don't think he likes me. And he said that's not true. And he almost sounded indignant. He said that's not true because he's the one that chose you. Wow. And I was like, oh. And he kind of gave me the matter of fact, I think it was you that said, D, out of all the people that actually ran to do this, you're the only one that won. And I was like, I had never even thought of it that way because I lost. You know, it felt like I lost at the end of the day because Marvel wouldn't give me any more work. And basically it was, they had the people that they enjoyed working with. So you had to be able to outdraw their people in order to do it.
The people that they were literally like married to, right? Like, because most people don't understand, like when, and I just did a video, I'm probably going to redo it as an A and B or a reel or a short. A lot of folks in the comic industry name drop, right? They do a lot of name dropping, but like many industries, especially entertainment, like animation and all that stuff, it really is a very small insular community. Everybody who's anybody knows each other to some degree, right? And there's usually somebody that can make a phone call, send an email or a text and say, hey, you know this cat, right? Because he's dropping your name, right? And like when I was talking to John Boy, and this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these videos, is because my students especially, and people that meet at shows, I tell the story all the time about Jordan. Now he's married, 3 kids, right? But you remember when he was a little guy, you were there when all our kids were little. And I remember we were at Wizard World Chicago, and we were walking around. He had to be about 7 or 8 at the time. And now I'm firmly vetted in the police department, and not even really thinking about comics, as far as I'm thinking about Honor Studios, but not, as time permits. I'm just trying to stay connected in some way. And so we're walking around the show, and everyone's like, yo, Solo, what up, Solo? Hey, Solo. And Jordan says this, and I kind of use it now as a sub handle when I'm streaming or whatever. He said, Daddy, it's like you're famous, but nobody knows who you are. Right? And what he was saying is, in his 7-year-old mind is, Dad, because he's a geek. Like, we're doing a new channel called Generation Geek. Jordan is like that geek. He's a geek's kid. I mean, he puts me to shame with his knowledge of retcons and issues, and he's that, right? He just FYI. Check out Generation Geek when we launch. He is definitely that. I'm just there as the old pro fogey. You know what I mean? He's got his finger on the pulse. But he's like, Dad, it's like you're famous, but nobody knows who you are. Wow. And what he was saying was, Dad, you know people that actually matter, but the world doesn't know who you are. You know what I mean? Because he sees all these artists, because he's, oh my God, Dad, this, like, yeah. And I don't drop names. And that's what throws people off, because I never drop names. I'm like a friend of mine in the industry. And I tell my students all the time, I said, make no mistakes. After, 20 years away from the industry, largely focusing on my police career and the whole 9 yards, I told him, I said, and this is not a humble brag, I could probably make a phone call and be on the book by next week, if that's what I wanted. Because you and I both know it's who you know, right? Can you meet a deadline? Yes, I can. Can you get those skills to pay the bills? Yes, I do. Now, who do you know? Right? And so you saying that kind of proves that point, is that, number one, is your relationship stronger than this next person? Because talent, I remember Bo Smith told me this, talent is a dime a dozen. He was like, Solo, you are talented. There's no question about you. The editor, who shall remain nameless because he had a bunch of issues and got ousted from the industry, he's like, he loved your work. He's like, there's no question you got talent. But make no mistake, talent is a dime a dozen. It's who you know and do they want to work with you.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it's in any part of the industry. It's like, if it's animation, if it's movies, if it's toys, if it's comics,
Look at the credits on animation. Have you ever looked at the credits on animation? Have you ever watched 2 or 3 different shows? I've done that, right? Because remember, I'm far removed from the animation industry, but animation, I'm doing some animation on now. I'm trying to do some animatics for my properties, right? It's the same names. You see them on repeat in the credits. The same people. Yeah. It's like, oh, I got a guy. It's a different production house, same names. Because
it's a really, really small world.
Yep.
Because when you go to this house, like, what are you doing over here? You actually run into people that you've worked with in other companies. Yep. It's just it's a circle, and they're going. They're going.
All you got to do is get in. I tell people, once you get in, all you really got to do is get in.
All you got to do is get in.
If you get in and do the work, if now it's up to you if you stay in. If you can get in and you do the work, you can stay as long as you want. As long as your name is good.
Always be friendly to the people that you might be working with, because you never know when you're going to need them. I've like connected with people, and I've had people go, you know what? I think so-and-so is hiring. Right. Let me call them. And they'll call someone, and then they'll say, hey, check out this portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in.
Or they'll get a job, and the producer, director, the head of the project, whatever, will say, you know what, we need a guy or a person that can do this. And someone says, I got a guy.
I know somebody.
I got a guy. I know somebody. Let me call him right quick. That's how it happens. You know what I mean? And granted, they may have applicants lined up on whatever. Well, who's got a guy first? Because it's name great. Like I told JB when he was here, it really blessed me because, you know, he's still a very credible name. You know what I mean? And when he saw me at Seattle Emerald City Comic Con when I first launched the school, now 2.5 years ago, he's like, Solo, man, if you give me a call, man. You know, your name is good to me. I got an editor if you're trying to get back in this.
I think I met John Boy through you.
I thought I met John Boy through you. I met John Boy through you. I met John Boy through you.
Like, who introduced John Boy to who?
You introduced John Boy to me. I didn't know who he was. I met John Boy through you. Yep, I'm 99% positive of that. Because I wasn't the guy I am now. I wasn't the guy that I am now. I was still very much, you know, very, very withdrawn. You know, I'm still very much in solo mode. You know what I mean? So like when we met, if it wasn't a instant connection, I wasn't one to go cold and just kind of introduce myself. Even when I was taking my portfolio around, again, folks, forgive us. You know, I can't believe, and I'm actually wearing the Wakanda shirt. Trust me, this wasn't a statement. This was not an intention. This was not an intention to be so Afrocentric on today's episode. Well, the X is my thing. You know, the X is my thing. That's Gen X. That's excellence. That's Malcolm X. That's all of it. Exceptional, X center. The X means so many things to me. But I did not mean for it to go. Maybe it may have been a subconscious influence. But when I was showing my portfolio around, I was very well aware that most comic guys, I mean, we're geeks. They're geeks, man. I mean, I grew up in the hood. I tell people I'm not a nice guy, and I know that. I'm not a nice guy. I think Jordan Peterson said it best. It's more valuable for a man to be dangerous who chooses kindness than to be a kind man incapable of danger. Right. And I tell people I'm very much a dangerous man. And I know that from where I come from, my career choices, from the military, from law enforcement. You know what I mean? I'm wired that way. I choose to be. I'm not a nice guy. I'm an acquired taste. And I know that. Right. And I'm OK with that. So when I would show my portfolios, you know, I'm 6'1", 6'2" with my shoes on. I'm fit. I'm young. I'm muscular, you know, always been in the gym, you know what I'm saying? And I knew that the guy across the table, editor, maybe a scrawny guy, grew up in the burbs, you know, listened to punk rock, that kind of dude. And good luck insulting me about my artwork. You might get snatched across the table, right? right. I come from that. You dig? But so to put them at ease, when I tell my students what I would say, because I was very well aware of the optics, you know what I mean? Because most of the times they're sitting down. Now I'm the 6'1", 6'2" muscular black dude is looming over you saying, check out my portfolio. Tell me what you think. While he waits. So to break the ice, I would say, hey, my name is DR Period. This is the artist known as Solo. He's trying to break into the industry. He wants to know what he thinks. So I can get back and let him know. So I kind of acted as my own agent, and I felt the walls come down. Oh, yeah. You know, so most people didn't know they were talking to Solo. I'm like, no, my name is DR Period. This is the artist on the Solo. Boom, check it out. You know, he's trying to break into the industry. He's a good friend of mine. All of it was true. Huh?
I wish I had known that one.
Right. And so I would see them kind of breathe like, okay, you know, and they felt like they could light into me but that's what I wanted because I really wanted to get better. You know what I mean? I wanted. One guy even told me, never forget this. He's a friend of yours? I'm like, yes. He was trying to do the math. He's a friend of yours? I'm like, yeah. I said, we came up together. All the truth, right? Not lying. You know, we grew up together. We really did, right? He said, hey, we grew up together, man. We're from the same hood. Wow, he's pretty good. You know what? And I hope he doesn't take this the wrong way, but it doesn't look like the work from a black guy. He literally said, I almost snatched him across the table. Literally. The poker face almost dropped. He said, it doesn't look like the work from a black guy. I said, what do you mean? Right? through gritted teeth, you know what I mean? And so he explained, that the cultural influence that have their tendencies to creep into the work. Basically, he was saying my stuff looks very mainstream, right? It looks very mainstream, and I get that. We know artists of the culture, right, and Afrofuturism and all that, and how it rightly so influences our work and sometimes our aesthetic. At the time, I was channeling European artists, admittedly, right? I was admittedly channeling, while, and I'm sure you will own this, while you were chasing Jim Lee, I was across the water, right? Remember, I was Carlos Pacheco and the Spanish guys.
Carlos Pacheco.
Yeah. Remember, I
really like this for Carlos Pacheco. And I was like, you know what? I'm not a huge fan of his work, but there would be like certain books he would do. The more books he did, the better he got.
What got me with Pacheco was his storytelling. That was always my big, like, this is what I tell people. Like, when we were coming up and you took a shine to me, and I say, let's just say me, you, and John Boy, since he's been on the show. I say it unapologetically. At that time, and I was the worst renderer of us, and I knew that, right? You all just drew incredibly. I think what I always hung my hat on was storytelling, because I knew the rendering would level up eventually. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? I'm like, if I do the deep dive into storytelling, and I told everybody, present company included, I will go toe to toe with anybody when it comes to storytelling. Now, granted, I think my rendering has leveled up over the years, as I knew it would, right? But that's because my mentor had told me, focus on storytelling. Your rendering will catch up. Focus on telling a story.
I always told you that your storytelling was great, because when you were doing War in Paradise,
mm-hmm.
It was like, I'm looking forward to helping them color this.
Yeah, man, you helped a lot.
So much detail.
I tell you, your fingerprints are all over my life, bro. Your fingerprints are all over my life. But I do that to encourage my students. You dig what I'm saying? I'm like, listen, don't worry about the rendering as much. That will come. You're going to be playing with styles. You're experimenting. But if you focus on storytelling, that will get you work.
The thing is, you're making a great point, because a lot of people forget that you need to keep learning. Don't stop learning. Because if you do, then that's when you become the weakest one.
That's your facts. But you've never been weak, and that's the thing that, like, I love and I hate about you. You know what I mean? It's like you've never had. Seriously, when you're like artistic Goku. You know what I'm saying? It's like every time you think he's getting his butt handed to him, there's another level. You dig what I'm saying? I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. Where's the ceiling to this dude, right? And it's like you're purple. And you got the orange on. You're like creative Goku. You're like creative black Goku. I'm like, soon as I think I catch up to you, I'm like, I think I got him now on the rendering. Here comes 3D. I'm like, oh my lord. I'm like, oh my lord. But this is what I'm talking. Like, I was talking to it's on the channel now, an interview I had with Seth Demus on Comic Conversations, where I interview at cons on the floor artists, right? And I told him, I said, this is what competition looks like to me. Like, JB didn't quite agree. I'm like, man, I'm competitive. But in where I come from, competition's a good thing. It's like, I find a standard and I break myself against that. You know what I mean? And I'm okay with breaking myself against it, knowing that eventually I'm going to level up, right? And it doesn't take from the shine of the person I'm chasing. It doesn't take from the shine. Like, you've always been a standard for me. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna break myself. I'm gonna keep breaking myself against the wall that is Deon Nuckols, right? Until I break through. But here's the problem: every time I break through, this Negro moves the goalpost, right? He's like, gotcha. Gotcha.
No,
But that's okay.
We've always done this thing, iron sharpens iron. Okay?
Right.
So there's something that I'll do, and there's something that you'll do, or there's something you'll say. And I'm like, right. I remember one time I was discouraged, and someone said something about my how did they have it? They said that this particular work reminds me of, I think it was like, for lack of a better word, something evil. Mm-hmm. And you were like, D, that wouldn't be correct, because think about the fruit you bear.
Right.
You know, the tree that's bearing apples can't bear orange and apples.
Right.
You know, and that has stayed with me for like years, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
So you'll do things like that if it's not art related. This man is dropping wisdom, and I'm like,
thank you.
You know,
I appreciate it.
Listen.
It was good to know I'm bringing some value, because I feel like I'm just taking from you all the time. Quite honestly, I feel like I'm just like taking from you all the time. You know what I mean? And that encourages me, man. I mean, because again, you know, when I see your body of work, again, having the privilege of having a first row seat to your creative journey from where I jumped on, you gave me you're like, nope, here's your VIP pass, boom. You know what I mean? That has been, especially, you know, I tell my story, I'm open with it. You know, I didn't do comics because I couldn't afford to, right? I couldn't afford to. And also, you know, being Gail's son, I always had a very entrepreneurial streak. That's what my mom put into me, you know. And once my mentor showed me how the sausage was made, as much as I loved the drawing part and the fantasy and the storytelling, as an industry, it was nonsensical to me. It made no sense to me. You know, I'm like, no, this is indentured servitude. Again, I mentioned the podcast on Ink Pulp. They talk about that. You know what I mean? They talk about it, and they're very open. I'm like, I got to get y'all on here because I want to have a deep dive into this conversation, because this is stuff that I have theorized, but not being in an inner circle in the comic book industry. I've pretty much kept my finger on the pulse of it, but I never dove head into it because I wanted to own my own ice cream parlor. I didn't want to be their flavor of the month, right? And so I think I don't even mention it because I don't know who said it, but someone said to me, he said, Sola, had you gone full board, I really think you would have been one of the greats. You would have been one of the greats. Well, I'm like, number one, I'm not done yet. I did 27 years in law enforcement because that was my career. Mm-hmm. Trust me, the miles you got on your pencil, by the grace of God, I tell people, I'm probably a 5-year-old, as far as table time, I'm probably 5 years old, corporately, where most guys drew. No, you knew I would take 3 years and not pick up a pencil because it wasn't how I earned my living. You know, I just had certain talents that allowed me to do that. And I tell people, talent is a gift that, you know, you can't explain, but don't live on that. Now I'm learning, I'm leveling up. I'm like, nope, I got all the books, I'm reading and I'm watching. I'm like, okay, my ceiling is looking pretty good at 51 years old, you know. But he said, Solo, I think you would have been one of the greats. And I'm not saying this to humble brag, but I said, you know what? I doubt that. He said, why? I said, because name me one, according to the marketplace. I'm not by opinion. I said by the marketplace. You know me, I'm a data and numbers guy, right? Name me one, just one, mm-hmm. A-list black artist in the mainstream industry. A-list. And he couldn't. You dig what I'm saying? Not who you think. I'm talking about who you put on the book. Sales are going to fly off. It's going to fly off the shelves because he's on it. That's A-list to me. That's your Jim Lee. You dig what I'm saying? That's your Mark. That's your Todd McFarlane. Even though I'm not a particular fan of his work. Silvestri. That's Mark Silvestri. You dig what I'm saying? That's a now new artist that I really love his work. Pepe Larraz, right? Those are A-list guys. I said, name me one black artist that was that. right? I said, Dennis Cowan ain't that. He's A-list to me because he started Milestone, which pulled me into comics when I was very down in 93, when I didn't have a job. And I went to the store just to look. And I saw, I'm like, oh my God, it's black characters. Now he's A-list to me, but as a trailblazer, not as an artist. You put him on a book, it ain't flying off the shelves. Give me one. And this is a guy in the industry. I know who it is. He's an inker. His name is Rodney Ramos. I'm gonna have him on here, right? He's got like 900 books to his credit, right? And he's Puerto Rican. He's in New York. I said, give me one. I said, I'll wait. Give me one. Not by opinion, not by the subjectivity that is art. Let's talk sales, because the market decides whether you're A-list. You see what I'm saying? The market does. Yeah. Okay, not opinion. How many units are you moving? You can give me one. I said, that's why. That's why I didn't go in, because I knew that, right? And my mentor, even though he was white, we had real talks. We had real conversations. And he appreciated that coming from a guy that was so young. They said, there's nobody looking like me at Mount Rushmore of comics. Nobody. I said, I'm not foolish. And it's not about confidence, because, I don't lack for that. It's about pragmatism. You see what I'm saying? I said, it's not that I don't believe I could do that, because I believe I could if the marketplace would allow for it.
But think about also what you just said. This is why a lot of black comic illustrators went and did their own thing. Because you're not going to pick me up. As soon as you see my face or you see my content, unless it looks like Jim Lee's or looks like Sylvester's or
how many black people were part of the image revolution? There wasn't a black artist. Not that there weren't any that were good enough. You see what I'm saying? It's about who are we willing.
Who's the one that was sitting next to Jim Lee at the cons?
Was it Will Spartasio?
No, it was
he's Filipino. Brian Benjamin. His protege. Yeah, he's doing a lot of stuff with Proco now. Yeah, Ryan Benjamin, who is a Jim Lee acolyte. He's a Jim Lee acolyte.
When you see his work, it looks like,
it's like Jim Lee 2.0. Not quite as refined as we know. It's filtered through his own lens, but you can tell he has supped on the teat of Jim Lee. He is suckled.
at the time, he hasn't gotten the accolades or the amount of books sold as Jim Lee has.
And I think a lot of that. You know why I'm so militant today? I just put my finger on it. I've been tainted, right? I've been tainted. I've been this morning during my workout, when your brain is operating at its highest intake is when you first wake up, right? So I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I hit the gym by 5. Who I'm, and I'm not even a fan of his by and large, but I like to listen to the conversations. Dr. Umar, he's very militant, black Pan-Africanism, right? Dr. Umar. And I was listening to Dr. Umar this morning. I'm like, this is why I've been influenced, right? I'm feeling very militant. And so, anyway, I'm listening. When I look at what the industry, again, there's always somebody, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but there's always truth to it, right? There's somebody who's making the decisions on who's going to be the star, who's going to be at the top, right? Whether it's editor in chief, whether it's the media company that, because comics has always been propped up by whatever the dominant media force is of the era. Again, back during Crazy Cat and George Harriman, it was newspapers. Newspapers were king. That's how people got their news, right?
I always was looking for Spider-Man in newspapers.
Newspapers were king. They were the key media outlet. There was no television. It was newspapers and radio. And many of the newspapers owned the radio stations, right? By now it's the entertainment studios. It's Warner Brothers. It's Time Warner. It's Discovery. It's you know what I mean. It's those entities. And so whoever it is, I don't know who it is. I don't even want to speculate. But they've never chosen one of us. It's not because we weren't good enough. You know what I mean? It's somebody that's always going to be, we're going to highlight this artist. You know what I mean? They're going to be the new hot thing, and they push them in the books, and they're putting them on all these high end titles. It's never really been one of us. You dig what I'm saying? And I don't know. Again, when I look at some of the artists that like, I don't know if you remember this or if I told you this, but I was mentored for a period of time by Mark Bright, MD Bright, the original artist on Icon, right? He and I've been trying to reach out to him, Mr. Bright. If you see this, I've been reaching out to you. I've been sending you emails. I've called you a couple of times and left voicemail messages. If you see this, Mr. Bright, or somebody who knows him, tell him Solo is looking to reconnect with him. But it was in the early 2000s, right? I literally just cold emailed him during his website, and his website is still up. It's got an AOL tag on it, right? Mm-hmm. And he and I started talking by phone weekly, and I would send him things, and he would comment back. And so this was huge for me. We're talking about Icon, the original Icon and Rocket artist, and he also worked on Avengers, and he got to start in Marvel, and he was in advertising. And Mark Bright is amazing, right? Had all the skills to be a top tier artist. He was never promoted like that. You see, you know what I mean? And when I look at his work, I find no real weaknesses. You know what I'm saying? No real weaknesses.
Do you remember the guy that was doing? I can't remember his name. I'm sure you will. He was doing Black Lightning.
Oh, you talking about Van? The one. He was 17 when he got on the DC. Oh my gosh. No. Eddie.
What's Eddie's last name? Eddie.
You talking?
You can look it up, by the way.
Okay, so I'm thinking about one of the early Black Lightning artists. He was 17 years old.
He was much.
He was
later.
black.
He was
okay,
dude. He was really good. Eddie. What is Eddie's last name? Anyway, I had a chance to work with him, and his work was just phenomenal. It was amazing. And to your point, it was like what he had said to me was, when he first got his start, he was at a comic book shop, and Eddie Newell.
Eddie Newell. I'm not familiar with him.
I think it's Eddie Newell. Look up Eddie Newell. N-E-W Newell. I think it's N-E-W-E-L-L.
I'm thinking about Trevor Von Eaton. He was black, born in Guyana, and he was 17 years old when he started working on Black Lightning.
Yeah, Eddie Newell was also working on Black Lightning.
Eddie Newell.
That's his name. And I remember him telling me the story. He was working at a comic shop, and people would see him drawing, and they said, you ought to work for DC. And he says, I will,
Ed Newell. Mm-hmm.
Ed Newell. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They brought it up as Ed Newell.
Ed Newell. Newell, yes. Eddie Newell. 1990. Yeah, Eddie Newell. Yep. Eddie Newell.
But he was one of those people. Was like, when you looked at his work, I would sit there and watch him draw and go, dude. I had the opportunity to bring him in as an artist for.
I'm looking. Oh my gosh, this stuff is nice.
Oh man, his stuff is gorgeous. But he never got recognized as the artist he is. I mean, because he could have easily have been on Black Panther,
but they never they wouldn't put us on major titles, at least, and definitely not for extended runs.
No.
You see what I'm saying? Like when I was talking to my dude, he was telling me, he's like, so he mentioned Ken Lashley. And I hope to get Ken Lashley on here. I love his sketch work. like his sketch work. I think
It's amazing, dude.
I think I love his sketch work more than I love his sequentials. Ken Lashley is that dude.
I have to agree with you on that one. Because I've worked with Ken. I had him come in as an artist over at Hasbro, doing some freelance.
Because he mentions his work at Hasbro. I didn't know that he got that through you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not patting myself on the back.
No, it just gives me leverage to reach out to him. I'm gonna drop your name.
Oh, absolutely. Drop my name. Eddie was doing these sketches, and as he was sketching, he would sit there and talk, but he never stopped what he was doing. His work ethic is amazing.
Eddie Newell. And see, I don't even know who he is, and that's a problem. See, that's the problem.
But you don't know who he is?
I don't even know who he is. I just looked up his work, and I'm like, okay, the fact that I don't know who he is, and mind you, I'm not like a comic collector. I keep my finger on the pulse of like hot artists, you know what I mean, and writers, because I'm a writer as well. And so the fact that I'm looking at something, okay, see, I don't know who he is, and that's a problem. That's problematic to me.
I call him Big Kid because when you see him, like my hand, my hand's not that big.
Right.
His hand is like this.
Wow.
To me.
Wow.
I'm like,
yeah.
You're just gonna swallow my whole hand.
Yeah.
Just to shake.
I believe it. And so like when I was saying about Ken Lashley, my dude said, well, what about Ken Lashley? I said, Ken Lashley is somebody who should be A-list to me.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? He should be. It's not for lack of skill. It's not for lack of library. It's to me. It's not for lack of talent, right? Or work ethic. The man's a machine. You see what I'm saying? He's about that life. Tell you what made me really fall for Mr. Lashley was recently I saw an interview on a channel that's actually smaller than mine right now, and I was kind of surprised. But he made a comment, and me, that competitive streak. He said he was doing a draw, and I'm sure you guys, if you watch the JB thing, you've heard me say it. I will repeat stories because I'm old, right? And I can do that because this is my platform, right? And so anyway, I'm old and this is my house, so deal with it. It's my house, right? What Granny used to say, this is my house. And so anyway, but what really got me turned on with Ken, besides his books are no real weaknesses on the storytelling, but that's not really what turns me on. It's literally his sketch work. When I see what that brother does when he's sketching, I'm like, and his end result and the efficiency with which he gets there, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I got a ways to go. I got a ways to go.
Dude, I remember sitting there watching him, and I'm like, where is this? Where's this reference coming from? Because a lot of times people take reference and hide it in your head and just use that reference. And he was like, well, I went to school as for fashion. And so a lot of these designs I just do based on my fashion sense comes out. And I'm like, oh my God. Because when you look at his designs,
I would love to see that. I just saw a few of his designs far down his timeline a few weeks ago. Because every day, for those of you all that know, again, this is a learning platform, and so I'm a big advocate of being a forever student. And I think Deon will attest, I am very much that. I buy books. I just don't buy them. I read them. You know what I mean? And I think you got me on the book thing. I can tell you what book you got me on. You got me. The first time I saw a production book was from, this is your fingerprints, and now I got a whole library of production books. It was Ghost in the Shell, the blue one. As soon as I saw that, I went home and bought it, and it's been driving toy nuts ever since, especially when Amazon became a thing, because this was pre-Amazon, right? When Amazon became a thing, now I got an entire library of nothing but production books. Right, that was the first time I'd ever seen
Ghost in the Shell.
The blue one. It's right over there in my thing. Hold on.
My wife has gotten to know me so well that now she'll go.
I see how close I keep it. This is what broke the ice with me with you when I saw this at your house. I'm like, oh, what is that? You know? And I bought it and I've had it ever since.
Hey, you didn't ask the right question. What you should have said is, "Can I have that?" Because I done gave it to you.
And you would, and that's a funny thing. That this brother would give the shirt off his back. He's always about blessing people. But when I was saying the thing that got me about Ken Lashley, huh? What'd you say?
I told somebody the other day. They asked me like how many sketchbooks I had, and I said, "Well, I'm not sure how many sketchbooks I do have, but as I remember, my brother asking for it was 11 by 17 sketchbook, and he asked for it, and I was like, because it's you.
Yep.
Anybody else not get my sketchbook.
And you know what happened to that sketchbook? You know what happened to that sketchbook? And I won't tell the testimony on this. We'll save it for Honor Studios. I'm gonna have to have you on Honor Studios when I do interviews with professional Christian creators, right? But what happened was that book was destroyed in a flood in my basement.
Oh wow!
I lost a lot of stuff, and that sketchbook was one of them, and it broke my heart. But there's a testimony that follows that flood, and I'll share that later. Right. But there was a testimony that the Lord was setting me up with that flood, and it flooded my basement in the city. I remember that sketchbook. But the funny thing is with Lashley, he said something that really was like, when I start this art-to-art conversation, I got to have Lashley on here. And he don't know me from a can of paint, but you know me, I ain't afraid to. I will drop in your DMs. Yo, bruh. Deon's my brother. Just so you know, this is a family affair. I might do it after your part one because it's going to be 2 parts since it's 2 hours. Once part 1 drops, I'm like, hey, part 1 of my interview with Deon, check it out. You know what I mean? And so he said this in his interview with his other comic centric channel that's popped up. He said he was doing a art battle. You remember how they had those at cons where they had 2 professional artists on the stage, right? They give them something to draw and they had a projector on the screen. And I forgot who he said he was going against. Hopefully he'll drop the name. But he said the dude put out his pencil, started sketching. He said, I saw him pull out his pencil because I think the guy asked him how did the marker thing started. He said, I wanted to show him it was levels to this thing. So I pulled out my marker while he's using his pencil. And I'm like, bruh, drop mic. He said, I want to show there was levels to this thing. And I'm like, I rocks with that. You know what I mean? It's not a level playing field. There are levels to this. The democratization social media has provided has given so many people a false sense of ability. It really has. There's a lot of great artists out there. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of people that have platforms and followings that are so deficient in their craft and they think they're better than what they are.
When he was at Hasbro, he pulled all he sketched in was permanent marker.
I believe
that was only thing he did. And it was like, dude, it was pieces of artwork, each and every single sketch. And he was working way faster than I ever could have thought of working. I'm sitting there going, I'm like, okay, how many does Ken get? He got like 25 sketches to my like 2.
Wow. I love it. I got to have him on here, man. And like I told my dude, when he mentioned Ken Lashley, I'm like, it's not for lack of ability. It's like he wasn't positioned in the landscape to be that. You see what I'm saying? Because you're talking about deserving? Man, come on.
Well, see, here's the other thing, too. I think a lot of people take Ken Lashley wrong. He's very assured of what he can do. And when you
it ain't bragging if it's the truth. It ain't bragging if it's the truth.
It's his talent, his skill, his ability.
Man, come on.
Sit down with a marker. I would love to see you do that. Sit down with not you, but
I'm practicing. Oh, he's forcing me to level up.
If you are an artist and you're talking about can't draw or anybody can do that. Sit down with a Sharpie marker and try to do what Ken Lashley did.
Good luck with that.
Good luck.
Good luck. Let me know how that turns out. And to your point, I'm practicing with that. I got a sketchbook by my bed. Nothing but, and I'm horrible. But I ain't trying to stay. Again, it's the iron sharpens iron. I have never met him, but I'm like, no, if I meet him and we have to go stroke for stroke, I like the peace of mind of knowing that, no, you may beat me, but I'm going to be at least a pace behind. Trust, it ain't going to be, you ain't leaving me in the dust, bruh. Believe that. You know, and that's okay, because it makes me want to be better. He inspires me to that, you know, because, man, I've watched every available Ken Lashley drawing video that there is, live drawing video. It's not enough of them. When I say it's not enough of them, it's not enough of them. And I'm like, if I can make a connection with him, dude, I'll just be your cameraman. Let's get this stuff for the world to see. Do I remember? He's probably one of the most transformational artists in the last, in the 21st century. Gone too soon.
Okay, so if we were to say, because Kim Jong-ji is, I don't want to offend anyone. Was he Korean?
He's from Korea. He's from Seoul. He was from South Korea. That's where I was stationed. So, yeah, I know for a fact he was from Korea. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if that's the Koreans version, then Ken Lashley would be ours. Because
you get no pushback from him.
And draw and like, oh my gosh, Ken, really?
What I like is how he is, again, I'm gonna reach out to him definitely, probably Monday. What I really like is that how, like yourself, similar paths, and this is one of the things that, like I said, our point of reference is always our experience, right? That's our point of reference. How the landscape has changed since I've been away to now being kind of thrust back into it because of Ka-Pow and the relaunch of Honor Studios. Hey, Vic! Hey, my love. I'm blessed. I cannot complain. The changing in the landscape has been profound. It really has been profound. I think social media has been the huge zeitgeist, the determining factor in what's happened to comics and comic conventions, right? Because literally it's like, I've been taken aback by how much things have shifted since I was actively doing cons, showing portfolio, you know, that kind of thing. And so with that being said, the level of proficiency, to me, and when I say proficiency, I'm talking about being able to do it with analog media, right? When I say analog media, I'm like, again, markers, pencil, paper. Okay. I'm seeing a lot.
That is now a huge challenge for me now.
Pencil and paper?
It is hard to do that now.
Yeah, and that's why I vacillate between, like, I'm working on pages right now. Some of the pages are going to be traditional. Some are going to be digital. But I fear that, right? I fear that convenience and that comfort that comes with digital. Because, let me tell you, so, like, I've seen... It's funny. Most of the artists that I see that operate with any real level of proficiency, when I say real, I'm talking about very few weaknesses, able to do it on cue with a pen, pencil, and paper in hand at the same level as they do it digitally. That's the determining factor, right? I see a lot of digital artists. Whatnot's been telling on people, right? Whatnot, the e-commerce platform. And they've been doing it unintentionally, asking these guys to draw live that have these huge digital covers, like the cover artists and stuff like that. But when they draw live, I'm like, that's a pretty huge fall off from what that digital stuff looks like. There's like no, it's like seriously, you know what I mean? I ain't gonna call no names. I don't want to put them on blast. But most of them are under the age. Most of them are under the age of, I would say 40, under the age of 40. You know, great as long as you okay. Get some water if you got to. You know, great if, you know, you have the luxury of always being next to your Cintiq or your iPad or what have you, right? But when they're talking about drawing a sketch cover or, doing a live sketch giveaway, when I tell you the drop off, brother, is significant amongst a lot of these current generation artists, I'm like, so you have really become, to a large degree, handicapped by digital media. Not you, but them,
No. But here's the thing is like, once you get used to, there's a lot of things that drawing digitally allows you to do way faster.
Okay? Oh, absolutely.
So, and because it allows you to do it faster, you can take a head and flip it, and then draw the rest of it, then paint over top of it.
Control Z.
Change your colors.
You don't need a plan. I tell my students, the thing about digital is you don't really have to go in with a plan. Not really. Because everything is optional and temporary. As opposed to traditional media, there's a level of, which is permanent.
If you put it down and you did it with pencil, and
it's down. You only got so much. You got so much erase. You only got so many erases in you. You know what I mean?
That's why they had the gum eraser.
Yep.
That's why they had.
Facts. And so when people often ask me, what do I prefer? Because I'm a hybrid. Thanks to you, like I said, you introduced me to the digital landscape. But because I consider myself very much a mutant, a hybrid of both. What I tell my students, and tell me if you agree with this, there is a level of assuredness and confidence that only comes with operating in traditional media as opposed to digital, in my opinion, right? I see a level of confidence in those artists that once they go digital, digital's a breeze. Because again, the permanence of traditional. I gotta make sure these lines are right. I gotta make sure these colors are right. There's no lifting them or changing them is going to be a headache. Once these inks are down, oh my gosh, they are down. You understand what I'm saying?
So here's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Push back. Feel free to push back.
On the digital side, as you can see, I had I've got like 2 tablets over here. Mm-hmm. So I'm like very much digital, but yet at the same time, I got like a sketchbook.
Right.
If you are not, let me go back. One of the things that I said to a friend of mine is that a lot of these people, matter of fact, it was somebody at work.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, this AI is going to take over. I said, no. I said, the reason why it's not going to take over, and what I would do if I were going to be in that arena is where they ask, okay, you have to use AI. I'm going to make sure that I can paint over top of that AI to make sure that I can use whatever it is
without copyright infringement. Yes.
Yeah.
Without legal action. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to have the fundamentals so that you can at least do what you want to do from physical to digital. Mm-hmm. So if I understand how to draw a face, I can sit there and do the basic. I can sketch it like I do with a pencil.
I agree with you 100%.
A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll put it in a pencil brush, so it looks like a pencil.
It looks like a pencil aesthetically, and so I think we're talking about 2 different things. I agree with you. It's not going to draw it for you, right? When I say what I'm talking about is I've seen a distinct, let's call it swag, right? Okay. Ken Lashley has that. You know what I mean? I know I have that. Right. Well, I don't have it to his level, but there's no. I feel the same way drawing traditionally as far as what the output's going to be, the end result, as I do digitally. You dig what I'm saying? There's a consistency there because I have confidence in the media. You know what I mean? In my ability to manipulate it and control it. Right. Whereas a lot of these younger artists, what I'm seeing, and I'm just seeing this, again, this is hypothesis, this is theory, not saying that they don't have any base drawing skills, because they have that, because the stuff's not drawing it for you, right?
Right.
But there's a lack of confidence that I'm seeing when they have to have, again, when they're doing it on the sketch cover in front of a live audience. And I'm like, yeah, that looks nothing like what you put on that cover. You know what I mean? And not saying that it's not fundamentally solid, you know, but it doesn't have the polish. It doesn't have the finesse. It doesn't have the flair, right? Like what Lashley does, his traditional stuff is as hot and as heavy as his digital stuff. You dig what I'm saying? There's no fall off at all. If anything, I would hazard to say he's better when he's doing traditional as opposed to digital.
His traditional stuff, like I said, when he lays down a marker.
Come on, man.
I'm like, as soon as he laid down that marker at work, I was like, oh no, I'm out.
I'm done. Tap out. Tap out. Tap out. You got me, bro. And so that's the point I'm making. It's not. It's
your arm back here like this. Tap, tap, tap.
Don't break. Please don't break it. Don't break it. I need it. Right. And so that's what I'm saying is like I'm seeing this, and that's why I tell my students, I'm like I'm and maybe the old man in me, right? I'm not anti-digital. They've seen my prints, right? They've seen my work, right? And that's just. But let me show you. Let me tell you what happens to me at every show. There we have it. The most recent segment of Deon Nuckols. I'm sure you can recognize by now that his journey has been profound, and he doesn't do a lot of interviews. You know, you probably heard me say this before. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and he really said solo only because it's you. You know, he's a lot like me. You probably can't tell because I have this channel and other channels that are all centered around my love for geek culture as well as my personal projects and my school. But I'm very much an introvert, just like him, and this is forceful action for me. And so I get it when he says, you know, I really don't like doing this kind of stuff, but I'll do it for you. That's his affection for me personally. That's our relationship. And I am so privileged to share this with you. And hopefully you get some value out of it. Okay. You know, my granny used to always say, if you really want to let somebody just tell on themselves, just give them enough time to talk and just listen. And you might find some gems and some gold as well as some pitfalls to avoid. And that's what we're trying to provide here at Art2Art at Ka-Pow, the Comic Art Academy. And so until the next episode, we're going to probably wrap up our conversation with Deon Nuckols because it was close to a 5-hour conversation. But these are how our conversations always go. Let me tell you something. My wife, she can tell when Deon and I are on the phone, as well as his wife. They're like, you must be on the phone with your brother. Because we don't talk all the time, but we block out segments of our calendar so we can just sit down and reconnect. And you guys are witness to how that looks. They're not always this long, but they can be pretty lengthy because, you know, when you connect with somebody that brings you value and that you value as a human being, as a creative, as a mentor, you know, and we know that time is short. And so we got to take advantage of it. And with that being said, remember, like I close out in every video, life is short. Treat each day as if it were your last, knowing that when all is said and done, when you leave here, all that will remain is the life you've lived, the lives you touched, and the stories you've created. So what are you waiting for? Get to it. Solo out. Ka-Pow.